right. We're on number 5. Snail Collective. Weekly number 5. That's pretty amazing, I think. To keep a pattern going for any length of time in the realm is quite astounding. So thank you to everyone who helped with that possibility. Hopefully we can keep going. Might be a little quiet today. I'm not sure if a lot of people are showing up. Samir's not. Daniel said he was. I think Gayatri said she was, but haven't heard from her. Maybe it will just be me. I'll just be talking to myself. That's always a good show, though. I could interview Phil.
You could. You could interview your coffee mug. Or sake.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to see that cat. What was that cat's name? Do you remember?
I don't know what you're talking about.
The cat at the art hop thing? In the garage? With curly tail?
Mm-hmm.
Curly cute tail.
Exactly. See you in a while. Be good.
Maybe it will just be Daniel and I. I know he'll show up. As far as the whole rest, I'm not sure today. Samir said no. Don't know what Ren's doing. Oh.
Yeah. Nice.
Hey,
Ahoy, Captain.
how's it going?
Good.
I wish I was captain, but this is actually a Soviet communist hat.
Oh,
Oh
nice.
shit.
Should I do the...
No, it's
Please do. We need to salute our overlords, right?
Uh-huh.
No, to make it clear, though, I'm not a communist. I promise.
You're not a communist?
No.
Enjoy.
Where's everyone else?
That's a good question. And I do not have the answer.
Really?
Well, I know that Samir is working. He was complaining about... Wait. Fix it full screen. He was complaining about that his his job... He's not getting a lot of hours, apparently, but the few hours that he is getting were conveniently placed right at the same time as the Snail Collective meetings.
Oh,
So,
really? That's
yeah.
unfortunate.
Mm-hmm.
Because I had a few days ago, I had another very interesting conversation with him, and
He wants to join them, but apparently he has conflicts, time conflicts a lot. He'll be back on. I kind of
Okay.
see it just as everyone's... To line everyone up on a regular basis is just not the easiest thing in the world. And when it does happen, I think we should just be happy that it worked out.
oh yeah, I totally understand. I mean, especially having people from around the world, different time zones and stuff.
Right. Like Gayatri was here last week, but it was 3 a.m. for her in Singapore.
There you go. Yeah.
And I think she's trying to come again today. I
Okay.
messaged her, but her little green dot is glowing, but
So if I didn't come on, then there would be no show, basically, or what?
well, I would probably just make a show by myself, like I always do anyway.
Well, I hope I didn't refrain you from doing that then.
Mm-mm.
Like kind of
No,
moseying
no,
on
no,
in
no.
here. Okay.
I definitely prefer to have someone else to speak with rather than talk to it's just my own brain talking to itself, which is entertaining, but I've done that quite
Yeah.
a bit, and I prefer to have other people as well.
Okay.
So, people might filter in, but I'm gonna post one more thing in the Snail Collective itself. That's what I wanted to do. I just posted it in Messenger rather than
Okay.
the actual. So just 1 second. Groups. Because this is where I normally post the link, but I just posted it in Messenger. Okay. So if it's just you and I, that's completely fine. Um, so how have you been, Daniel? It's been a week. Any new revelations or changes or?
Yeah, it's been quite a week. Um, Revelations. I mean, wow. Well, I had the meeting with Lauda, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I was just sort of expecting a talk and not like a supernatural meeting, but it almost turned into a not supernatural. I wouldn't go that far, but after the meetings over the 2 days, I was just flooded with revelations and visions and all kinds of insights and just all these interesting things. I'm like, where is this stuff coming from? I haven't had like these sort of downloads in years. Like it's been aside from the weird dreams and stuff like that, like it's been kind of dry in that regard. Like there was a time frame when I meditated like 3 hours a day and I would get stuff like that. But over like the last 2, 3 years, it's been really dry, like with the information downloads and stuff
Mm-hmm.
until we had this meeting and it's something just there's something about it that was just incredible. It's not just two people talking. There's more to it. Yeah.
Yeah, can you go into it? I know it's a private thing that you had with her, but can you talk about the topics at all, or anything that was discussed in relation to the realm at large and what she feels is going on here?
Yeah, no, it's totally fine. I mean, it's somewhat private, but I mean, not really because, well, there were some experiences that I discussed with her that I actually like never really discussed with anyone. I mean, I've discussed all my main stuff, the out of body stuff. There was a few things that happened that like really grabbed her attention that were not like very common types of experiences, and those being um, like electronic interference, which she actually discussed on her show before as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there was one time when I was on the couch in my living room and I got paralyzed, and I turn to my left, and the speakers in my room are like on full blast, and there's a voice that's coming through, and it's like an electronic robotic type voice, and it's speaking like at 1,000,000 miles an hour, just saying oh, and I couldn't understand the thing that it was saying. And this sort of thing happened another time about 3 years ago when I was just on my bed. I got paralyzed, and this voice came back, and same thing. Like it sounded like one of those like telephone operator things, like very robotic,
Mm-hmm.
but it was speaking so fast I couldn't discern what it was saying.
Could you
And
tell why you were paralyzed? Like, was it something that was just a side effect of the transmission, or like
that's a good
was it
question.
trying
I
to
don't know
force
because
you like to listen to it?
it definitely was forcing me to listen to it.
Yeah.
Absolutely, because I couldn't when the voice like came through, especially the incident with the speakers. Like I couldn't turn away. I had to listen. My head turned and I was listening to this voice.
Mm.
And as far as the paralysis, I've had sleep paralysis most of my life, so that's not really something that's like a rarity for me. Like it started when I was like very young, and most of the experiences were very terrifying, like very scary, just shadow figures standing next to me type stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and sometimes they would end up in out of body experiences and stuff like that. But I've had sleep paralysis. I don't know, 5, 6. It started very long time ago.
Huh.
It really ramped up around the age of 12.
How
Around
long would you say during that period of your life when you had sleep paralysis? How long would you say it would last until you could break out and actually move around again?
It depends. Like they varied. I mean, it would be from a few seconds, like very short, quick periods, to like 2 or even 3 minutes. Very, very long. Like you just in that position and you just can't get out, and it just feels like forever. You're just stuck.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. 2, 3 minutes, I would say, is probably the longest. But then again, it's hard to kind of frame time. You know what I mean? In that situation. So,
Yeah, I've had situations when I was younger. I don't have this anymore, but where inside of the dream it would feel like I couldn't breathe, and
yeah.
it would come out as I was drowning, or I was inside of like a room with no oxygen in it or something, and I would try to like move around in the dream to do something, but I finally would come to the realization that, and this was before I would wake up, but I would realize that in this reality I was like laying face down on my pillow, just face into the pillow, but I had a little bit of the sleep paralysis thing that you're talking about going on. So I would be aware that my face was in the pillow and I could not breathe, or I could breathe probably a little bit, otherwise I would pass out. But uh, it's the weirdest like terror feeling, because like you need to breathe, you need to do something about it, but you're in the dream state. So like, how do you send that signal to the body that's sleeping with the head stuck in the pillow?
Yeah, yeah, I totally get it. Like it could bring you to like a full blown panic mode, at
Mm-hmm.
times. Yeah,
But then you're not you're in the dream state still, so you can't even panic properly.
you can't. Yeah, exactly. So you're kind of stuck between both worlds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of that sort of feeling going on here, the stuck between worlds feeling.
That's actually, yeah, especially lately. I mean, Lauda would talk about the split. It almost feels like there's a split occurring right now between two worlds, or at the very least, like something is blending together. That hasn't happened before. Something weird is going on. Something is changing rapidly.
It really is, and I'm the last person that you'll hear jump on any type of anything. Like, for me to actually say, yeah, it feels like something's going on, like it has to be, something has to actually be going on, because for the most part I don't react to anything. I'm like, oh yeah, there's that, I've seen that a billion
Right.
times, I know about that one. But like, I see the same thing and I feel the same thing at this particular period, the 2020 coming to the 2020. It feels like there's a split, or it feels like something has to snap or break, or, and this might be a
That's
better
a good way of putting
alternative,
it.
yeah, is
Yeah,
maybe that it just opens up, in terms of the restrictive properties on the sort of living beings that are inhabiting this place, and we can actually move around and play with things, and like get a nice car if you want, or actually have land that you can, instead of playing the suppression thing, which most of the so-called reals are in that suppressed mode for whatever reason. So
yeah.
maybe.
It feels like it's kind of like people have been discussing, like it's kind of going both ways. Like on one hand, it's getting more suppressive, and on the other hand, it's getting more free, and that's one of the splits that's occurring, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
just sort of
it's like
depends, you know.
it's like it's happening on levels like this show in particular. I see that it's suppressed in certain aspects. I mean, very obviously it's suppressed, but like if you were to ask anyone, they're like, why was that channel like slowed down or whatever? They wouldn't be able to say why because I don't I don't sit here and call names. I don't sit here and like call out big companies or talk about, whatever the head deep state guy is doing. I don't really give a shit about that. But still, the content, there's something about open sharing of ideas without any restrictions, which is what this is, that the system itself is uneasy about and doesn't like it. Like, it's almost like it's trying to throttle the potentiality field of the field that I'm creating via the show. So it doesn't want to say it's doing that, but it does that because it's worried.
Well, yeah, it wants to maintain the narrative, right? The narrative being that we're just biological robots and that there's no meaning to anything and that you're just a tiny little speck in space and that you live this tiny, short little life and you're this irrelevant little amoeba that just means that's what they want to maintain. They want you to make you feel like you're nothing. Like you're all a bunch of little pet slaves. We tell you the truth. We know what's going on. You listen to us. We're the scientists.
Yeah. The scientist thing, it does try to make you feel insignificant, but
Yeah.
it also doesn't, in a sense, because via quantum mechanics, when that finally came out, the true nature of subatomic particles, when that finally like came out, and the double slit experiment was huge in terms of that. Schrodinger's cat, all these things came together, and they just said basically like, the material world isn't even materials. It's pretending. It's like energetics pretending to be material. So
Yeah, like a magic trick.
yeah. So like the hardcore objective realists that hold that, objective truth in terms of concepts somehow exists. I think that model sort of fell apart
Yeah.
because you can't have it like all the Mandela effect alone in and of itself. Just you see that people's realities are shifting under their feet like quicksand all the time.
Yeah, the Mandela effect. It's almost like I try to come up with a new theory for that every single day, and it's like there's always something that's like there's a big piece of the puzzle that's just always missing. That's how I feel about it. Like,
Yeah.
you ever have that too? It's like, okay, this makes sense, but there's this big piece right here that that just doesn't match. There's something about it. Like, what is that your overall theory about it? That we're actually individually shifting in our own realities? Is that what you think?
Yeah, I think it is. We are shifting in our own realities, but we do share a collective playground.
Yeah, we
Right.
do. Yeah. Mhm.
So, but the other thing that makes it complicated that people don't talk about very much, but I've been aware of for a while, is that if you move around on the land with lots of givens, like assumptions, okay, then there could be literally just different things that are in there. Like to you, say a tree is there, but to the other person, that particular tree is not there, okay? But unless, if you're operating on givens and, it doesn't matter necessarily what the landscape of trees looks like, you're not going to verify to your friend, like, hey, that tree right there, is that there for you? Is that there? You don't do that. You know what I'm saying? So
You don't exactly. You don't do that. Like
it could just be that it could just be that it's very different, not just a little bit. It's very different, and only the massive things like the 9/11 type import, like that much gravity, maybe is so different, and we don't even look into it because we operate on givens all the time.
Yeah, And the predictive programming for that was really, really disturbing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yeah. 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 Like I think it's like what you said when you went up, flew up above the earth, and you were seeing these different timelines. What you were saying, what I felt like you were saying was that there are anchors that flow through a particular timeline that are kind of there regardless of what the individual players are doing, like the 9/11 type things or the JFK assassination type things or what have you. Those things
yeah,
kind of stay, and I know I've heard other people say also, like, people that get rich do so because of those set points that they're operating as constants. So they get ready for the set point, and then they set up their business to take care of the beforehand, the during, and the after, and then all of a sudden they're millionaires or billionaires. Not because they were creatively brilliant and came up with a new idea, but because they were operating around that sort
they
of
know
parameter.
natural law very, very well. Maybe they
Maybe.
know how to operate a natural law or how to go around it. Actually, could be another thing. But what's interesting is like heard someone discuss like so I think that these different Earths are kind of tuned. They're like tuned to a certain. I don't want to use the overused word vibration, but for lack of a better word, vibration or frequency, and they're kind of in a sense like pre-programmed to evolve a certain way. I
Mm-hmm.
believe, and people discuss like there's the Sagittarius Earth, and we're on the Orion Earth, and there's the Virgo Earth, and I think there could be some truth to that. Like there's different versions of Earth that are pegged to different constellations, and each are kind of tuned to their own unique frequency and evolve in their own unique way. And over here where we are, it's like tuned to like black metal or something.
Yeah, like
With a freaking messed up song over here.
yeah, like it's tuned to like a gothic, dark, like masochistic, demigod creature that is just hates
Yeah,
himself or something.
exactly. And that's what I was saying. I don't know if you watched the video about my dreams, the last one, have you?
I did.
Yeah.
Where you were
So
not in the
yeah,
closet?
I'm sorry.
The most recent one that you're
Yeah, the
walking
most
around the
recent one.
living room, right?
Yeah, yeah, not that one, that one.
I
Yeah,
did. I watched that one.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, that's the sense that I was getting observing these different timelines or whatever they were. Like, even though there was a lot of similarities, like in a sense, like it wasn't like super duper or anything out of the ordinary. People were living normal lives. Like they were. I saw. I didn't discuss every single detail, but I saw like a child version of myself going to a school and in like a school bus type thing. And there's people going to school, working, building stuff, and it was a lot of normal stuff. But it just, I when I arrived back here, like, okay, there's so many similarities, but it's so off at the same time. So I couldn't figure out what was going on. Like, what is the mismatch here? Am I missing something? Like, is it the frequency? Is it something is distorted in the reality? I don't know.
Yeah. It becomes difficult to uh like I've had the idea before to literally treat myself as if I was your typical, like, uh, you know, alien person mismatched with the planet, like just waking up on a strange planet like you hear in sci-fi stories, literally treating
Yeah,
myself like that and just walking up to the nearest whoever and saying like, "Hey, like what planet is this? What year is this?" and just playing that and seeing if you can get like more dirt, so to speak, like because when you run around and operate with a certain mind state, you're operating in a frequency and people give to you according to that frequency. So like you're not going to
yes.
get necessarily uh, information about the place if you come at it as like, oh, I just grew up here, because they're going to think that you should know all that stuff. So if the planet itself was under like a known quarantine, but people don't talk about it just in the street all the time, but
Uh-huh.
you never ask the nearest cop like, hey, is this planet under a quarantine? They maybe would have just said, yeah, of course, we've been under this thing since yada yada yada, and we don't talk about it in public for
I know
various
what you
reasons.
mean. Yeah, I get it.
You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? Like you have to be a little more creative in how you apprehend the outside world. I think, especially when you're dealing with the idea that at some point the thing just went like this and branched out a shit ton of parallels, like all kinds of, with probably certain constants shared between them, but aside from that, like, you don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's really interesting. Yeah, and then the first dream I discussed, that was, I mean, I hope we don't see a future like that. That was especially disturbing. The underground city and everything like that. I mean,
Where
I
you were
love
like, they were asking for your scan, I think
your
you called it.
scan. Yeah, I mean, it was something like straight out of a Hollywood movie. Like, um, and I don't know. I have you ever heard of what do you call it? A Bashar
Yeah.
channel by Daryl Anka. I
Yep.
mean, I take a lot of channel material with a grain of salt, but there is something about Bashar that I do feel is, I mean, at least partially genuine. So he was, someone asked him, I remember watching, like, who the gray aliens were, right? And he
Mhm.
said that that was a parallel version of Earth that destroyed their surface. They had to go underground, and then they evolved into these mutated gray creatures that don't resemble humans anymore. And I'm
Uh-huh.
like, that's interesting, because after I had that dream and I was thinking to myself, is this the version of Earth that destroyed the surface and they're now forced to live below ground in cities that they built?
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is something like that. Also, Tobias Lars, have you heard of him?
No.
Look him up if you want to get a little bit of new insights. He's pretty good in terms of his openness to, you know
Hmm.
new concepts and things. But he he says he talks to God, he talks to Jesus, he talks to like a lot of the sort of,
We could all talk to them.
right,
I,
right.
yeah.
But like
Yeah.
he does, and he's done tons of uh, ayahuasca trips. He's hosted them. He's basically a spiritual guide of sorts. And he
Oh,
came
nice. Okay.
he came from being like, hardcore business guy. Like his dad was, I think, a physicist, a high end physicist, at
Hmm.
Harvard or something. I don't remember the exact specifics, but Tobias at some point just was fed up with the sort of dead-ish money model
Yeah.
economic mind that you're given when you're a physicist and scientist in that age. And he flew off the deep end and eventually took ayahuasca. And then he eventually saw, like, oh, this world is not what a typical scientist is trying to tell you. It is not that whatsoever, right? So he's done all his thing. He's interesting guy, but at some point he was talking to what he called God, and he was asking him, like, what are like, what are these alien things, what are these grays, or what are these type of weird deformed creatures that some people talk about. And God told him that a very similar story, where, like, he was like, yeah, that's you, that's an option for you if you want to go down this. It's a billion year sort of evolution option that you have to basically make the choice that you want to use all of these tools and toys, like, i.e., the transhumanist movement, like start using all kinds of machinery inside of your body, and that the very doing of that will start depleting all the Earth's resources, right? So while you're building yourself up, you're depleting the Earth's resources, and eventually that balance goes too far over, and wars happen inevitably because you're pushing too hard. And
Right.
then they have to become more reliant on the technology, and the human spark gets less and less and less. And what God was telling him was that that's just a path. Like, this is the infinite. Like, we are in literally the eternity, and every path can and probably will be examined to some extent. And some of them are hard, some of them are not hard, but that's a path. Like, if you get down that will be you at some point, billions of years into the future. You're going to be this husk of a thing that's made of machines and giant ass eyes, and you can't, like, barely any feelings left. And
Oh.
at some point, God told him, like, that's a dead end for life itself, for the spark that sort of keeps things moving.
It'll
That's
self-destruct.
it's a
I think.
self-destructing thing.
Yeah.
It will be just the husk at some point, and there won't be any life left. So it's
You
like
know,
you can do that. It is a choice to go down that path if you want, but do you want to do that?
yeah, I think the alternative on the more like divine side of things, a while back, I actually started working on this quasi book on the subject, but where you kind of progressively evolve more and more into like it kind of expands, like you become a collective of beings, like all of the beings become one being, then the one being becomes merges with the planet that you're on, then
Mhm.
you evolve and merge with the solar system. It's basically like an expansion of consciousness where eventually the unified kind of body of a planet expands and encompasses the entire galaxy, and then
Yeah,
expands further from there, and that's how you become your own universe, by kind of merging with the collective of the universe. That's just one idea, basically. I don't know. I'm just like I've been looking at like pictures of planets in our solar system, and I'm like, are these really just dead planets with no life, or could it be that they actually evolved into like a spiritual like state to where you're unable to see the life because it's in another dimension, and they evolved into a collective of some kind, maybe. I
yeah.
don't know.
That thing you're talking about is kind of how Cavastalis sounds when he's. My brother's into him pretty good, and
Oh,
but
George.
yeah,
Yeah, I know that guy. Yeah.
George's idea, how he tells it, is that all of us here that are not NPCs or we're not robot creatures, whoever has the spark, you started off as galaxies. Like you started off as a conglomerate of stars, and then to have this experience, they got compressed into like a star. You got compressed from a galaxy into a single star, and then
Okay.
it was like the compression went down instead of up. So instead of thinking about how do we ascend, we were saying how do we descend into Earth, like into a human
Uh,
body.
so we're descending deeper and deeper so that we could go ascend again, sort of.
Yeah, yeah, exactly,
Into the collective. Interesting. Okay.
exactly. And the
So
way
we're kind of breaking ourselves down, chopping us down, ourselves down, bit by bit, fractal by fractal, so that we could
yeah,
recreate ourselves and become big again.
yeah,
That's cool. I
to
like that.
explore. It's really cool. It's a crazy idea.
Yeah.
But he was saying Ben, my brother Ben, was saying, or the way that Cavassilis explains it is that the thing that they call free will here is like there isn't really free will in a certain aspect
I think the same thing. Yeah.
because you're dealing with like compression of galaxies and star systems into like a human body, and time gets compressed as well. So like
Yeah.
the thing, like if you were to take any moment, like you say your hands are moving around, this and that. Okay,
Yeah.
like on a certain level, it's you could say the hand is moving infinitely slowly, and you could imagine like there are little itty bitty beings like monitoring flow of information to the brain, back to the thing, back to the brain, and then they're also managing the interdimensional counterparts that have the thought systems and any other beings that are looking in, and it's incredibly slow. But to us, it's really fast, right? So you could imagine like the whole thing could be managed, completely managed from top to bottom because of the time compression ratio that to them this movement here takes a year and everything is taken care of in between that. But for us, it's just 1 second kind of a thing.
Exactly. Wow, that's brilliant. Yeah, and I mean, that doesn't necessarily. It's like there's like this weird like divine dichotomy. I don't know what the right word is. Like oxymoron. Like you do have free will, but at the same time you don't have free will. It's kind
Right.
of how I see it.
Right.
Like yes, like you have a branch, like a tree that branches out, and all of these pathways that you could possibly take, but that tree and that branch was already laid there before you were even there. It's
Exactly.
already there. Yeah.
Exactly.
So
There's
that's
free
why.
there's free will in the feeling sense, like in the sense that you think about what can I do? Oh, I have choice. I can move my finger this way or this way. In that feeling sense, there is free will, but then in the sense that the linearity of yourself, which, you know, you're not multidimensional in this particular thing, you're in one path, the linearity compresses into a single timeline every time. So in that sense, you're not free. You're stuck in that exact timeline. And who's to say, like, it could be different? You don't know if it could be different. That's those
Exactly.
The parallels are only contained in your mind, and you don't even, like, that's very ephemeral sort of material.
And you just made a good point. They're contained in your mind. Where are your thoughts coming from? Who? What is influencing your own mind? It's like, how do we know this stuff? You know, it's a really deep and kind of touchy subject, man.
It is. It is.
Well, just ask. Let's, for example, like, we could take the whole history of the Earth. Like, why did things play out that way? Like, why? Like, why did the Industrial Revolution happen? Like, it didn't have to. Like, what collective? Like, there was some sort of collective spark that sparked the Industrial Revolution, right? Like, that would have to be the case. Like, what, all these brilliant people just suddenly just came up with all these machines out of nowhere? It had to have come from somewhere. Like, these ideas had to have originated, these thought forms had to originate from somewhere else, like, you know?
Yeah. I don't buy almost any narrative that's given
Like,
by, you know, the NPC population, which is all of school. And you know what I'm saying, like, you have to if you get creative for a second, then you just see, like, this is just literally a form that someone clonked on over the populace. Like, not much thought was even given to it, because, like, for instance, I wouldn't even need all of this shit we have, that the what do you call it? The machine, the monetary machine, basically is creating. It's creating useless trinkets, like, endlessly, and just they all go to landfill.
yeah.
I would never do that. I would never say, like, let's take all of the resources of the planet and turn it into useless nonsense that you use once and throw it away and go buy another one the next day. Like, what? Who the fuck would ever think that could be a good idea in a universe? I would never do it.
Make no sense. It
Just
makes
makes no sense.
at all. Like,
And the whole idea of planned obsolescence, like, when I heard that was an actual thing that companies did, I was like,
yeah.
whatever is going on here, if there is a mind that's somehow ordering this, it's a retarded mind, like, it's a dumb mind, or it's like a
The
mentally,
mindless machine.
Yeah,
It's a mindless machine, yeah.
it's something that you couldn't actually. That's why I came to the conclusion that this realm is some sort of upside down realm where
Yeah.
you come in as an organic being, and whatever seems like just normal for you, then you try to go around and do it, and then all of the other beings, or sort of NPC, like, computer populace, they're gonna, like, say, hey, you can't do that, you know, like, that's yada yada yada, and they'll explain some logic, but then you're like, well, that feels natural to me. And, you know, then basically you have the full circle of the biblical story saying, you know, Adam and Eve, and the whole idea of you should feel guilty that you exist in the first place. That's it pairs together, right? And then you feel guilty for existing. You feel guilty for doing the things that feel natural to you.
Exactly. Like, as far as, like, the NPC thing goes, like, I personally, like, it's, for me, like, I don't believe that there are actually bodies without souls. I think, like, the vast majority of the people here do contain a divine spark, but the thing is that everyone's, like, on a different level. Like, some are far less evolved and some are far more evolved, and there's a lot of in between. However, I think there is an actual, like, NPC robotic android, a small segment of the population that is, like, in the testing phase, that they're kind of just throwing out in the population to see if we're able to tell the difference between them. I think there is a certain group of people like that, but for me personally, I don't really buy into the, like, totally soulless person thing. Like,
Yeah.
if there is a psychopath or if there is a super narcissist, it's just they're very underdeveloped souls, in my opinion. But I don't know. Like, who knows? Like, anything.
Yeah. It can always be anything, and I didn't like the NPC idea when I first heard it.
Yeah.
I didn't like it because, number one, it meant that if it was true, then There's
It
only
segregates
well,
people
there's
into
only
categories. Yeah,
there's only a few people to me, okay, that
yeah,
have that just have the ability to talk about the reality itself.
yeah, yeah.
Just that one thing, okay? There's only a few people to me that number one can even have the notion to talk about it in the first place, and then number two are have enough inner fortitude to have pushed past the backlash and the back blow they're going to get inevitably from bringing the topics up, because the realm doesn't want anybody asking those questions.
Well, yeah, that's the thing is like you don't necessarily need like the NPC narrative to explain that they could the mass of the population could literally be under some sort of spell or hypnosis,
Right, right.
which
That's yeah.
actually makes total sense because we were talking about the English language before, and that's a spell language.
Yeah.
How you know,
Yeah.
and that's the number like even though Mandarin is the number one most spoken language, English is so widespread that it's widespread enough at this point that it can be used for spell casting worldwide. You know.
Yeah.
And there could be literally like hypnosis machines that we don't even know about that could be coming through the computers, through the TVs, maybe from even space. Like, who knows? They're probably doing all this crazy crap we don't know about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's I do feel like there are energetic fences, invisible fences everywhere,
Yeah.
and when you start waking up, you start seeing them sort of as they're not fences that someone really gives a shit if you're passing over. They're built in to almost protect the person that's walking around rather than like get them in trouble from a big daddy that is watching. It's more the latter. So like once you've progressed enough as a soul to see the fence for what it is and see that you don't actually have to stop when the fence is there, then you just simply go through it, and that's that. Like now you're in a new part of the territory that you were being blocked from before, like to
Yeah.
protect you.
Exactly. Exactly. I like the way you put that. That makes sense. Yeah.
Because it's a self-monitoring thing. Like outside of the idea of policemen, like policemen, yes, that's sort of a thing that exists, and maybe it does actually help for super violent instances. But if you go one mental step outside of that paradigm, then there's no purpose for authority. Authority outside is only there to help like squish the narrative into the same thing. It's not there for like enforcing morality, which is of course subjective anyway. That it breaks apart really quickly. You see, like there's not a purpose. The thing does not. It self monitors. Like each individual being
Self monitors.
self
Yes.
monitors through their own intelligence, and there are outside forces I think that help, but it's like the fractal thing. Like the whole is contained within each particle. Like you don't need to go tell each particle, okay, history lesson, here's math lesson, here's your yada yada yada. No, like that's inside of every little bit. That's why the thing is fractal.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I like that. Um, So yeah, I want to quickly mention like my wacky wild theory on the Mandela effect, which considering I don't really know anything about physics or quantum physics, like it's I shouldn't even be discussing it, but I have a theory like earlier in the show we are discussing the split. So let's just say for example like we are in this dimension, let's just call it the third dimension, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
that's what everyone calls it, the third dimension.
Yeah.
So you have it disintegrating like on a molecular level. Let's say a divine sort of energy, a divine light that's coming through either the sun or through the galaxy, and it's in the process of like cleansing and disintegrating this kind of collective thought form that we created, maybe even physically disintegrated to some degree if it's like contained within like a tight molecular structure. So it's dissipating, it's falling apart. So you're the elites. You want to try to contain that from people noticing what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So what do? You become friends with the reptilians or whoever, and you build these super duper technology elaborate machines that make an attempt to contain the current system and prevent the divine light from coming through. So, in an attempt to contain it, they're actually kind of bending space time, and it's causing these ripples, which are changing the past and the present. And that's why people are noticing this Mandela effect, because they're trying to forcibly compress this dimension and contain it within itself and prevent it from becoming a new Earth, and
Right.
creating the split, which is going to happen inevitably anyway. I believe the split
Yeah.
is going to happen inevitably anyway. But
Yeah.
they're trying to contain it. What do you
Yes.
think of that?
I think that's correct. Okay, like this is for me to really to go into that thought. I have to explain some other thing that I
Yeah.
had to come to terms with. And the other thing that I had to come to terms with was that when you're waking up, when you're coming out of deep snooze, right, on this planet, yeah, we're intelligent, right? Like you're an intelligent guy. I'm intelligent enough. Uh, you know, you feel like you can see things reasonably clear, and you come out of the snooze and you're like, oh man, you start using your brain and looking at things. And the first thing that I saw was that it it just was like weird. Like the way that the thing was put together didn't make a lot of sense, and questions didn't want to be asked or answered, and it felt kind of oppressive. And the first thing that like hit me was that this system is dumb. Like, and then I went to the top and I was like, who created it? And then it was like God created it, and I was like, God must be dumb. Like that some sort of thing came about that was just like, if all of this is allowed to be happening, then something is dumb. Like why? You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. Yeah.
But then I had to come to terms with the fact that like the system is not dumb. God is not dumb. And whatever is known as the devil or Satan is also very much not dumb. And the dark elite are not dumb. And everything that you can see has a very distinct and actual purpose, and nothing is dumb.
Nothing's by accident.
Nothing's by accident. But what I realize is that like the most far-fetched notion of how this sort of place would be contained for so long probably is actually true. So like if you talk about, yeah, the underground elite are trying to like phase the reality in place that's trying to ascend itself via connecting technology to black holes. Lauda actually said this. She said like in some dimensions the dark faction literally like connected technology to an actual black hole in space, and they were manipulating.
Oh, wow.
They were entraining the populace due to the
Yeah.
the phasing of the power that came off that black hole. And that's how a lot of religions contain people. That's how the Kabbalah can entrained the populace that rotates around it like magnetic filaments. When the center magnet is doing something, all the little people are, you know what I'm saying? Like the entrainment methods are very real. And instead of me coming to the conclusion that, well, the whole thing is dumb and I'm somehow smart for seeing that it's dumb, I came to the other conclusion, was that the thing is absolutely amazing and barely comprehensible at all. Like the power structures that move through here you can barely even think about it without your mind exploding. That's what the actual truth is of it.
Yeah, well, I've always thought like this so-called Illuminati, like, I mean, I think they're absolutely brilliant. I mean, you could say that they're hideously brilliant, but they're absolute geniuses, and they're probably actually very evolved souls. Like, they're probably not even in this realm, to be honest with you. Like, the actual Illuminati, if they even exist, they're probably not contained within this reality. They're probably outside of it.
Probably.
Yeah.
Very very likely the sort of constants that you see in any one realm is a bit of like glue that holds a lots of parallels together, and it's
Yeah.
a control structure that somehow managed to filter itself out to the parallels.
Yeah.
To where in any individual world you couldn't be like, hey, control structure, like what are you doing, bastard, like why are you fucking around with us, because it's being beamed from a central source to all kinds of parallels.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, yeah, I've never like for many years I never thought like, oh, these bankers, these oligarchs, these oil barons, those are the Illuminati. No, those are that's not the Illuminati. Like, come on, it's just rich assholes.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all they are. Yeah, they have power. Of course, they have power. They have power over the banking system. They have power over, you know, the economy. They have all kinds of power, but they're not the Illuminati. That's different. I think that's very different stuff. And I'm not talking about the Illuminati, the Adam Weishaupt, the 1700s stuff.
Mm.
When I'm saying the Illuminati, I'm talking about the puppet masters of the reality.
Yeah.
We could call them another name. Like, I'm not talking about like some gentleman's club, some elite club or something. No, this is different.
Well,
I just
I think this is
yeah,
this is another idea I sort of came to, was that like
yeah,
it, in some sense, it probably is like seven dudes or whatever that have like a poker room. It's all kind of dirty, and they literally like, they're like, hey guys, we gotta have the meeting, about the parallels. We gotta look into what they're doing.
yeah,
I'd rather be, playing golf or whatever, but we gotta do this. So they'd get into their little dingy room and they just pull out their seeing device, and then it goes, inside this dirty room, and they just see all the parallels, and they're like, they start tinkering with it, and they're like, let's tell them this, let's tell them that, let's, we got to keep them entertained somehow, or it's,
yeah,
I
yeah.
feel like top to bottom, the power structures, they're it can be whimsical. Like, it doesn't have to be like, grr, because the whole angry power thing, it just results in entropic worlds that do have to sort of get recycled at some point. And at some point there's no purpose to continue to have a sort of slave planet, like how people say this one is. There, in the broader scope of it, that becomes useless at some point. It's good to have, I mean, it's good to have experience, but it gets old at some point to not have like a sort of thrilling narrative go with all of the possibilities. Like, why would you be telling the story in such a dry, yeah, this is a slave planet and everyone hates us and we're basically suck and we're gonna die, so let's go and hide under a rock.
Yeah,
Like, why do that?
yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, but then again, like, just makes me wonder, like, can so if we could evolve, like, expand and become more of what we are over expansion, can the opposite also happen? Can the dark side devolve and become darker and darker and darker? Kind of been wondering about that. Maybe they can.
I think so. I think we're witnessing that in Hillary Clinton. I think she's the dark side that only can go
Yeah,
deeper and darker and more spastic, and you know.
yeah. The whole political thing seems to be
Yeah.
going in that direction.
Dude,
Hmm.
I had not seen political debates in forever, and when Andrea and I had barely met, we were at some crappy Motel 6. Somehow we pulled up on the television the political debate that was going on whenever it
Uh-huh.
was going on, like 2018 or something. Uh, and that's when it fully hit me that like NPCs are completely real. Was that these commentators, they literally were robotic, like they were like,
Uh-huh.
it was like over the top robotic, like they had all the talking points in like red and blue, and their percentages were flying all over the place. They were treating the political commentary exactly like football, how they air football,
Yeah.
talking they were literally doing football. They were throwing the ball to the guy whoever was going to talk, like about whatever stupid political thing. And there was no sense of what you could call real, like whatever you and I talk about, how we speak. None of that was present in the people that were talking whatsoever. And they were talking
That,
about, they were supposedly the leaders of this, like a state.
I'm not entirely sure if Joe Biden is actually human. I look at that guy, I'm like, what is wrong with this guy? Like, something is just so off about him. Like, he just doesn't look right at all. And
Uh-huh.
I have the same feeling when I look at Mike Pence. I'm like, Mike Pence doesn't even look human either. I'm like,
Yeah. Are you following McAfee at all? You follow that guy?
No.
Follow John McAfee on Twitter if you guys, whoever's watching, if anyone wants a good entertainment. That guy is, he's really putting on a good show. Like, he's supposedly running from the government. He built himself a whole foil tent that he started broadcasting from. He's like, I'm in my Faraday cage, you know, running from the government. He's the one that created McAfee security for PCs back in the day, and he made millions of dollars off of that.
Sounds really familiar, yeah. Well, yeah, you made a good point. I mean, I think, like, from the upper realms, like what we just discussed, the Illuminati or whatever, meeting in their little room, I think they're maybe watching these debates and they're saying to themselves, how completely and utterly absurd can we make this? And let's do it in that way. Just make it as retarded and as obviously ridiculous as possible. And if they still don't notice how stupid it is, then we can't help.
Then we can't help, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Like, if the people are just going to be steered by whoever's blowing the hot air, in no matter what they tell them, they're going to just, you blow this way, I go this way. You blow this way, I go this way. Like, I will listen to you no matter what you say, no matter how ridiculous it looks, no matter how many, like, horror, death, gore, religion, you know, upside down religions we give you and tell you need to be saved from. No matter what we do, you just follow. At that point, there is not.
Follow. Yeah.
There's nothing left to save anymore. There's no, like, humanity left to save, and you might as well just, like, turn the world off. Like, all right, that version of Earth, there's nothing left in there, so just turn it off, you know?
Yeah, I mean, that's in a way, like, they've it's kind of sinister at the same time too, because they've sort of set it up in a way to kind of lead us to our own downfall, but at the same time they are kind of, it's complicated. I don't even know how to explain it. It's like, I don't know.
It's a lot.
People are weird. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know, like, I think those who are ready to move beyond the construct and the bindings of it, I think you can move. Like, I am an example. I can move outside of it. I can speak my mind. I don't withhold information. I don't censor myself. And I have an audience. I don't have the whole world as an audience, but the whole world isn't ready for what I'm talking about whatsoever. Like, people's minds would explode and they'd have a nervous breakdown if they actually believed half of the things that I talk about. But I'm still, like, free. Like, nobody's telling me what to say. Nobody's telling me what to do. I'm not vested with any group, or I don't care. Like, if you want to talk to me, you have to be a being and you have to have your own self-autonomy and your own energy. And you can talk to me. We can talk about whatever. But you can get free. Like, I'm an example of it. I'm not entrenched in that system. I'm my own thing completely.
Yeah.
Where it's going, you know, I have no idea, but that's part of, like, just the craziness of existence. Nobody knows where it's going.
Yeah, I mean, if you knew, there would be no point of, like, incarnating and breaking down our fractals from the stars to here, you know?
Exactly.
There'd be no point of it if you knew, you know, exactly. The whole point is for it to be like this mysterious experience or whatever.
Well, it is, because, like, if you imagine,
is mysterious, yeah.
if you imagine that you're divine and you are, in a sense, God. Maybe you're not God that knows everything in this form, but you're a fractal piece of it.
Of God.
You're a drop in the ocean.
Piece of God, yeah.
Then you have to imagine, like, how would God actually, like, put the thing together to where he actually was stumped. Like, he couldn't just snap his fingers and, like, whoa, now all the problems are over. You know what I'm saying? Like, it would be
exactly. Yeah.
It would be like this, where you have to be doing shit jobs that you hate. You have to be around people that, you know, annoy the fuck out of you, and you can't escape the situation. Like, that's exactly how it would manifest itself.
Yeah, or they would, you know, soul. I mean, each soul is unique, and each soul wants to challenge itself in its own unique way. You know, kind of. Sort of deal too, you know, like, I think I mean, even though, you know, I don't support war and all this horror and stuff, but I'm sure there are souls that want to experience war, to learn bravery, to learn valor. I don't know, you know, all kinds of scenarios are possible, you know.
Every scenario is possible.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
We're coming close to the end of the free thing, and I think I think this was a pretty good show, actually, even with
Yeah,
just you
yeah,
and
this
I.
was really interesting. Yeah.
Um,
So 3 minutes. Any final thoughts?
uh, I'm trying to get Lauda back on the show. I emailed her recently and reestablished contact. I hadn't
Awesome.
talked with her for a while, so sort of like having you have me send the picture helped to reestablish a little bit of contact with her. So I want to have her back on probably within the next few months.
That would be awesome. I checked out your guys' last show and it was absolutely spectacular.
Yeah, that was. I mean, it was labeled part one, so I know there was supposed to be a part two, but it just hasn't. Maybe part two will be a year after part one. I'm not sure.
I'm curious, have you ever actually met her in person?
Yeah, I stayed with her for 3 days.
Oh wow, really
I did.
awesome.
I did a whole trip
Hmm.
last year during the summer,
She
and
actually has like gatherings because this is a person
no,
I would love to meet in person too.
no, this was my thing. I visited.
Okay.
I
Hmm.
visited the people I'm staying with now. I visited John, Big John, up in Canada. Stayed with him for a couple days. Stayed with Lauda for a couple days, and then I came back. This was during all the fires of last year. So like when I was driving from California, 8 out of the 10 days of the 10-day trip were completely smoky.
You know, sorry, just a second.
We have less than a minute anyway, so I gotta cut this short. But um,
Yeah, yeah, it was awesome. Thanks for having me on. It was a great discussion, and
yes, yes,
hopefully next week we'll have more people on.
we will, we will.
Yeah, for
Take care,
sure.
Daniel. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Bye bye.
Bye.